Let's speculate for a moment. What would occur if our sun all of a sudden headed out? For an hour or for a month, or let's state even for an entire year? What would occur to humanity? The really last photons from the surface area of our star and the last particles that comprise the solar wind have actually begun their last flight towards the Earth. Nobody yet believes that the heart of our planetary system has actually stopped working. 8 to 9 minutes later on, and the sky unexpectedly turns black. Darkness descends upon the whole world. No matter whether at the moment it's the deep dark of midnight or a brilliant warm noontime at your area, you can rapidly and quickly see the distinction. The stars are now all plainly noticeable versus the large black background of the sky. The moon is not noticeable at all because there's no longer any sunshine were it to show. A minute prior to the beginning of the all-enshrouding darkness, brilliant northern lights might appear due to modifications in the electromagnetic field around the Earth and the disruptions in the ionosphere. The most terrible effect of all is the utter and total cessation of the procedure of photosynthesis, leading to cyanobacteria and plants no longer producing oxygen. This will quickly result in problems for every single living being. After an hour, real panic reigns over the heretofore daytime side of the Earth. Power and interaction blackouts propagate throughout the whole world. Temperature levels all over stop by numerous degrees, and the Earth's surface area starts to gradually cool. From the inside, the Earth is still warmed by its molten core. 24 hours in, dawn has not and will not get here. The temperature level on the surface is up to in between 5 degrees to 7 degrees Celsius, that's about 41 degrees to 45 degrees Fahrenheit, and has actually now decreased by about 15 degrees to 20 degrees Celsius, that's a drop of about 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Some types of microbes and plants start to pass away. The occupants of the ocean for the time being feel nearly no changes. After 7 days, it's still dark. The typical temperature level in the world is now minus 17 degrees Celsius, that's about 1 degree Fahrenheit. In locations where there are tectonic faults, it's still warm. Thanks to geothermal energy not letting the surface area freeze over. Many plants have actually currently passed away due to cold or absence of light. Herbivorous and heat-carrying animals likewise start to pass away. In the oceans, phytoplankton start to pass away. The residents of shallow waters suffer enormously from the cold, and the surface area of the ocean is starting to rely on ice. By now, researchers and other people have actually recognized what has actually occurred and hurried to arrange and gear up shelters. 1 month in, and the Earth is continuing to cool. The typical temperature level on the surface is now about minus 30 degrees Celsius, that's minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit. And nearly the whole world is now covered with ice. Practically all cyanobacteria and plants have actually died. Some types of trees, particularly conifers, are still alive. With the absence of sunshine, even they are not producing oxygen. Many of the Earth-living things have actually passed away. Some germs still continue with their regular life activity. The majority of the staying life in the world is now discovered just near geothermal springs and underwater. Remarkably, the layer of ice on the surface of the ocean decreases their cooling. And in the locations of oceanic geothermal sources and tectonic faults, the water is still warm. Clearly being naturally warmed. Even in the ocean, the drama of a mass termination occasion starts to unfold. 1 year in, and the surface area of the Earth and the oceans are covered with a thick layer of ice. According to Professor David Stevenson at Caltech, the temperature level on the surface of the Earth need to drop to about minus 40 degrees Celsius, which is the very same in Fahrenheit. Life withstands now just deep in the Earth oceans, and maybe some groups of human beings might be able to endure on the surface of the world in places like Iceland and other locations with big quantities of geothermal activity. Professor Stevenson thinks that the Earth will continue to cool for another number of thousand years. Up until the surface area temperature level reaches around minus 160 degrees Celsius, that's about minus 256 degrees Fahrenheit. At that point, life on Earth in the typical sense of the word will simply end up being difficult. And let's not forget the gravity of the Sun. It's not likely that the Sun might all of a sudden go out without losing its gravitational pull. The asteroids and worlds will simply fly away into external area if the Sun stops to hold the worlds and other celestial bodies in their orbit. A few of them perhaps even hitting one another. The Earth for one will skyrocket out into deep space where it might get bombarded with asteroids, comets and radiation, hit another world or perhaps someday wind up in the gravity well of a great void. There's likewise a really little possibility that after roaming through area for a long time, the Earth would have the ability to incorporate into another excellent system and discover a brand new sun. In the end, nevertheless, it's essential to understand that this circumstance is simply a fantasy. Or rather a believed experiment of sorts. When it comes to the genuine future of our star, in a number of billion years the Sun will turn and swell into a red giant. Our star will swallow Mercury, Venus, Earth and Mars will end up being warmed up to a number of thousand degrees. In 5 billion years, the Sun will toss and blow up off its external envelope, leaving at the center of the solar system, a slowly cooling outstanding core. A white dwarf around which will orbit whatever stays of the solar system after the surge. Worrying mankind, its fate stays unidentified. Ideally by that time we'll have the ability to fly to other planets and galaxy.